Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. This episode of Everyone Loves Guitar is brought to you by Taylor Guitars and their new Grand Pacific Round Shoulder Dreadnought. Powered by Taylor's breakthrough V-Class bracing system, the Grand Pacific gives you a warm, seasoned sound with clear low-end power and notes that are stronger, longer sustaining, and more in tune with each other all the way up the fretboard. Make sure you check it out online at taylorguitars.com, then go out and play one today. That's the new Grand Pacific at taylorguitars.com. Did you know if your instrument or any of your gear is damaged, broken, or stolen outside your home, your homeowner's insurance policy will not cover any of it? That's right. Homeowner's insurance only pays if something happens inside your home. But Music Pro Insurance insures all your music gear, no matter where it is, anywhere in the world, even when you check it in as baggage on an airline. Here, let me give you some examples. Let's say you're in a car accident and your equipment is damaged. You're covered. Your kid pours apple juice into your amplifier. Covered. Someone spills beer all over your pedal board at a gig somewhere across the world. Boom, you're covered. Any kind of theft or accidental damage is covered, even water damage from hurricanes and breakage from earthquakes. But here's what makes Music Pro really different. They're not going to argue with you over the value of your instrument or make you run around looking for receipts when it comes time to paying your claim. They know exactly why your vintage instrument is worth 10 times more than a new one. Plus, all claims are typically paid and fully settled in 24 to 48 hours. So if your equipment is not insured properly, go to musicproinsurance.com, hit standard, then enter your information and get a free gear protection estimate. Don't be that player who ignores this, and then next month when something happens, you're wondering why you didn't take 10 minutes to do this properly. Make sure you go to musicproinsurance.com, enter your information, and get a free gear protection estimate. If something happens, you will be thanking me. Trust me on this. musicproinsurance.com. The Be Fulfilled Journal helps you be more honest with yourself and with others and be more open to handling things you've avoided dealing with for years. It's a 12-week online and journal program that helps you identify and eliminate things you do that are causing you stress and live in more gratitude and joy. It was actually developed by a long-term friend of mine who got sober in 2008, and he's put together a great deal just for my listeners. You get the 300-page hardcover journal and access to the 12-week video program online, plus free shipping, plus membership in a private Facebook support group with others going through the program, plus a 5-day mini course showing you how to let go of stuff that's draining your energy, plus a 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. To start your journey and get all the bonuses, go to BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. That's BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. For information about advertising on Everyone Loves Guitar, including information on geographically targeted ads, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. Man, we have a truly special guest today. We're with the one and only Les Davidson, who's just a top musician, session player, guitarist, touring guitarist, recording guitarist from England. And he's just, a hell of a nice guy, man. One of the warmest people I've had the pleasure to talk to. He's originally from Scotland. He'll tell you that's why he's from Scotland. And he's currently living in London. Some of the people, small sampling of the people he's toured and played with. Check out these names: Leo Sayer, Joan Armatrading, Paul Rogers, Jack Bruce, Mick Taylor, Eddie Cleanhead Vincent, Tina Turner, Kenny Jones, Pete Townshend, Sniff and the Tears, and he's a member of Sniff and the Tears, a band member. They, if you remember, back in the late 70s, they had a number 15 hit called Driver's Seat. Les has been a band member since 1981, played with Rumor, Donovan, Steve Coogan, Pete Brown, Bonnie Tyler, Snuffy Walden, who a lot of people don't know, but he played, he did the parts for, what's his name? I'm having a brain fart.
Stevie Wonder. Well, he only did free stuff.
Yeah. Well,
he did
Paul Kossoff. Paul Kossoff. Yeah, I couldn't think of his name. The Corgies, Graham Bonnet, and Vonda Shepard. TV shows he's been involved with include Not the 9 O'Clock News, The Red Dwarf, Alan Partridge, Three of a Kind, Q8 with Spike Milligan, Goodness Gracious Me, The Young Ones, The Two Ronnies, which I've actually seen, Spitting Image, Frank Skinner, Richard O'Brien, and theater work has included Tommy, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Lenny Comes to Town, We Will Rock You, Lindsay Kemp's Flowers, and Salome at the Traverse in Edinburgh. Movies, Half Moon Street with Michael Caine, Aliens from Outer Space with Mel Smith, The Missing Link full-length cartoon, he did a co-write on that as well, Punk Strut, Riff Raff with Robert Carlyle, and he is currently a guitar teacher over at BIM in London, and BIM is kind of like Musicians Institute. Les, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've been looking forward to this.
Great. Thank you, man. Thank you.
My first question is, when did you move from Scotland to England? You never lost your accent. I hear your accent still.
Yeah, well, it's the East Coast being Edinburgh, so it's not quite as strong as some of the Glaswegian accents. But
sure.
Yeah, there's a whole mafia of Scottish musicians in London. so I suppose we retain our accents.
Yeah, man.
When did I move? Well, I moved when I was about 19. And before that, I'd come down to London, auditioned for a couple of bands, and I hadn't got the gig. I wasn't really ready, but that was a good learning curve.
Yeah.
But I moved down around about the age of 19 because I'd been in local bands up in Edinburgh, and a manager, because Edinburgh, it has the Edinburgh Festival, and so during that sort of 7 to 10 week period of the year, another million people come into the city. And so a lot of people come from London, a lot of people come from America, a lot of people come from Europe nowadays, from Australia and China and everywhere, And so back in the day, a manager of an artist called Pete Atkin, who was an English singer-songwriter, sort of pretty local to Britain and Europe, I suppose. I don't think he ever did any business in America, so to speak, but very talented. And his manager saw my drummer and the band I was with, and the bass player and the band I was in, and hired us to back him on a British tour. And that essentially allowed us to end up in London and make the move. Although, we had a few connections with some people, him included, but that was about it. But I mean, to be honest with you, I'd been thinking about moving from Edinburgh either to London or to Los Angeles. But, I ended up in London, and it seemed like a good start.
Very cool. So you basically came to not be a big fish in the small pond.
Yes. Yeah. And to see what it was like, and to see if I could do it. I had no idea. I really had no idea. And in those days as well, because I'm talking about 1971, I think, I can't remember exactly. But, we didn't have any internet, we didn't have any YouTube, we didn't have mobile phones, so everything was like, find out.
Yeah.
Do it and find out. And everything was word of mouth. And, but there was this big, really excellent scene, and certainly in London, really vibrant, and a lot of things going on. Big music scene, lots of places to play. So you could go out. I mean, one of the things you could do is you could go out any night of the week, and you could just go into a club type bar place, and you didn't really care what the bands were. There may be a couple of bands on the bill, and you just go in and enjoy yourself and discover new bands, new players, and so it was very vibrant. It was really cool. It was a great time. Yeah.
I think it's so cool. I have so much respect for people that make a move to another country at a young age. It's like it's not something we do here, but like my wife did that. She came to the States and she's like 21 or maybe 25. Something. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of courage it takes to make a move to another country, man.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think for different reasons people move, but the reason I moved really, or wanted to move, was the fact that that I felt that it wasn't so much like, in my mind, it wasn't being a big fish in a small pond. It was more like, I can see that the life I could lead as a musician if I stayed was going to be small, and it might be difficult to make a decent living because the amount of work that was available was probably certainly wasn't enough for me. That's what I felt at the time. And so the move to London, obviously, whether it was going to make me or break me, was worth a try.
Sure, man.
So that was the main reason,
Well,
and just to get educated as well, just to find out and hear all these other players or see and meet these other players, that I'd maybe heard on record. I knew that I would very possibly see them performing in London and get to shake their hand and go, hey, I love what you do, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it was all that, that was the reason for me.
Very cool, man. And it worked out, obviously.
It has so far.
So far. So your first gig was this singer-songwriter that you came over with.
Yeah.
How'd you break into session work?
Well, that's quite simple. What happened was, after been doing this British tour with Pete Atkin and a couple of other gigs, I'd already auditioned for a guy called Pete Brown, who wrote all the lyrics for Cream and for Jack Bruce. And I hadn't got the job. I was 16 at the time, but he'd then come back up to the Edinburgh Festival, like I talked about, and said to me, he'd seen me play like 3 years later, and he said, anytime you want a gig, if there's a chair, going, you can have it. So I contacted him. And he went, oh, great, I'm looking for a guitar player. So I started doing some work with him, doing some gigs. And we started doing some demos and recording in a great little studio called Pathway Studios. The London guys that might hear this the older guys will remember it. I mean, I think Madness recorded there. I think Dire Straits recorded there. The Police recorded there.
Wow.
The list goes on. And it was like a shack. It was an 8-track shack, a wooden sort of shack. It was tiny, but it just had a great sound. So we're doing some demos in there, and Pete had hired another musician who was a sax player. And we were running through a few tunes, and we were playing them in different styles before we recorded them, because we're demoing them, so we weren't sure how we were going to do them. And I'd been lucky, the people that I'd come across in Edinburgh, who were guitar players, particularly a guy called Lachlan McCall, who's still a friend of mine, he's about 10 years older than me. He'd really encouraged me to try and listen and learn all the different styles that were available on a guitar. And so this sax player said, hey, you could get work as a session player because you seem to be able to play in these different styles. And I was like, what is a session player? I didn't.
Yeah, of course. How would you? Yeah.
I was like, what? And so he said, look, here's the number of this guy who's a fixer, a contractor, an agent, but we call them fixers, and send him, in those days, a cassette. So I sent some of the demos and a couple of other things of other little projects I recorded. And I heard nothing. And then one morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning, in the place I was living in London, we had a pay phone in the hall because we didn't have actually phones. That was the
sure.
We put money into the phone in the hall. It was one of these like apartments, And the phone went, and nobody answered it. And the phone went again, and it had woken me up. And then I went and answered it, and it was this fixer who said, be at Scorpio Studios at 10 o'clock this morning, and said, we'll speak about a ring later, and put the phone down. Thankfully, I knew where Scorpio Studios was because there was a big scorpion on the side of it, and I'd been aware of it. So I went down there, tail in between my legs, and started, walked into the studio. I think I saw Ray Cooper on percussion.
Wow. Elton John's, yeah.
So I walked into sort of because what had happened was the guitar player was ill or was not available, who's a really established guitar player. And I think to be honest with you, I think he'd been trying to get anybody and couldn't get anybody, or it only happened, very late the night before. So he thought, I'll call this guy and see if he's available. I mean, it was just the luck of the draw, I think. So I walked in and didn't know really well. I'd been in the studio a few times, but I didn't really know how sessions per se went. People dictating what they want you to play. So that's how it started, and then it took a while, because you still had to prove yourself, and there were some very scary moments where lots of as we used to call it fly shit, which was music put in front of us. Play that. Excuse me, I can't read this very well because I'm a guitar player. That's it. It's the thing. How to shut a guitar player up? Put some music in front of them.
That's a good one.
So anyway, I had a little bit of training in that area, but not much. But I learned fast because the threat of being fired or the threat of not being able to get paid for something you're pretty sure you could play, but you might not be able to read. You sort of you get it together pretty quick. Sure. And I had help from some of the other players. There were some amazing, people in that period of all musicians, all disciplines, who were really nice and helpful. I was the new kid on the block. And in fact, Simon Phillips, the drummer, was around at the same time, who played with everybody.
Such a good drummer, that guy.
Yeah. Man. So, I did a few sessions with Simon in those days, and lots and lots of different people. It was an amazing time. And in fact, in those days, we, sort of mid-70s, it'd sometimes be 2 guitar players in the session, sometimes 3.
Oh, wow.
And then as time went by, there'd be 2 guitar players, and then there'd be 1 guitar player. Then there'd be no drummer, a drum machine, a Lindrum, and then there'd be just a guitar and a vocals and sequencers. And nowadays, there's not very much at all.
Yeah, people do everything from their house now.
They do. And, I do some Skype sessions, not Skype, but down the line,
sure.
Send stuff on Logic. I still do that on occasions. But, that world which was a really amazing time, is pretty much gone. I know it's pretty much gone around the world.
Yeah.
It's not just in London.
No.
But that was a lot of my training ground,
Do you think, I'm always amazed at like the serendipity sometimes, if you want to call it that, of, so you're thinking about coming to London and you get a gig that brings you there. And, there's, even if they were desperate, they didn't, and they call you. Do you ever wonder about like, things like that where they lined up for you? I don't mean like in some religious way, but I mean like some of the shit that like this, you gotta kind of wonder, is there some sort of like intervention here or something? Yes, I think there is, but also I think, you make your luck as well. So if you work really hard, and you genuinely try your very best, and I learned a couple of amazing things from other people, which I stick to today, which, the first one is the curve. I think we talked about it. First of all, who's Les Davidson? Get me Les Davidson. Get me a cheaper Les Davidson. Who's Les Davidson? Yeah, that was great. Can you say that to everybody? Because that was great, man.
Right. Well, I learned from these older session players the curve of one's career, and this is Les Davidson's curve: is who's Les Davidson? Get me Les Davidson. Get me a cheaper Les Davidson. Who's Les Davidson? So that's your trajectory and your landing. And in many ways, if you've gone through that curve and you've done all those things, it's okay when you get to who's Les Davidson, because it's like next. Who's next now? Who's the hot new player? And that's life anyway.
Sure.
It's fine. I don't want to be running around like a maniac like I was in those days, from studio to studio, like just stuffing down lunch and just, and having no time to do anything else but focus on that. But sure. For a young upcoming player, amazing. Yeah, absolutely. And the other one was the slippery ladder of success. So, the people you meet on the way up the ladder, be nice to them, because you're going to meet them on the way down.
There's a famous,
and they may give you a gig on the way back down that you really need. So be nice on the way up.
There's a guy named Barry Beckert, who is one of the founders of Muscle Shoals.
All right.
And I had interviewed a number of players who played with him, but one in particular said that he had this sign in front of his office, and it said, remember that the the toes of the person you step on the way up are attached to the ass you're going to need to kiss on the way down. Same thing. Yeah.
It's good. It's true. Yeah. It's true. It's true. And I think, because I loved it as well and still love it, I was fascinated by these other musicians. You know what I mean? So I really tried not to be an asshole. I'm sure I was on a few occasions. I'm sure a few of my friends and associates would say, yes, you were, but I tried not to be, and I still try not to be. So, and so to get back to the question as well, do you think it's all laid out for you? I think it is, but I think in many ways, if you work hard at it and you behave properly, good things happen. So I was with somebody today who said, if you give out a lot of good stuff to other people, you say to other people, hey, you're great at this, you're really good at this, and I enjoy being in your company and all that sort of stuff, and you really genuinely mean it, good things happen, So if you give out good stuff seems to come back, So, and I think in many ways, you don't even have to be religious. You can just think as being on a spiritual path, which I'm definitely on. I'm on a spiritual path. I've always felt that in my life since being a kid, because I was brought up on a farm. So, the whole farming thing, you saw life and death on a daily basis with the animals, So I was sort of aware that there was something greater than me, from
That's
being
so cool.
Yeah. So I've tried to sort of follow that. Sometimes I've gone left when I should have gone straight on, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah. So I think it is laid out, or could be. Yeah, we'll find out.
Find out, right? Both of us.
Yeah.
How'd you wind up connecting with Sniff and the Tears? Because as you mentioned, you weren't the original guitar player.
Yeah. Well, what happened there was I was doing an album for a guy called Zoot Money.
Zoot Money?
Zoot Money, yeah. And Zoot Money had the big roll band. In fact, he had Andy Summers in his band originally.
Holy cow.
And the Beatles used to come and see him play, because Zoot was one of along with Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames and Zoot Money and Alan Price, there were three keyboard players in London who were the sort of hip, the crossover from sort of jazz and R&B, Mose Allison and Ray Charles and all that. They were sort of trying to imitate. Well, they were imitating those musicians and artists. And Zoot was doing an album that Paul McCartney had financed, because he was getting Zoot to do a lot of old songs that Paul McCartney had in his catalogue. So we were recording things like Your Feet's Too Big and, Ain't Nothing Shaking But the Bacon and, all sorts of, old sort of R&B sort of crossover stuff. And Jim Diamond, bless him, who's no longer with us, the singer Jim Diamond, he was producing it. And the bass player that was on it was the now bass player of Sniff and the Tears, Nick South, who lives in Los Angeles, in fact, now.
That's wild.
And
it's a small world sometimes, isn't it?
It's a small world. So I was in session on that album, and Nick said, he knew at the time I was playing with Leo Sayer, that was my touring gig, and he just said, we're going to do some demos with Sniff and the Tears. Remember, they had a hit with, and actually I think I didn't remember. I was like, I don't know, okay, I just, at first I saw it as just another session, but when I got into the studio at Basing Street Studios, this is where we were actually doing the Zoot Money album, he said, we're going to be back here next week doing some Sniff stuff in the same studio, so come along. So I did, and I really enjoyed it. And then they just said, well, look, we don't actually have the guitar players anymore. The two guitar players have left, and we're looking for a guitar player. So I just sort of went, oh, all right then. Yeah, I sort of fancied being in a band at that point again. And that's how it happened. It was as simple as that. I got asked to a session and joined the band.
How crazy! That's what I'm saying. It's like these things just. And I know I spoke to someone the other day. Or I think that Doug Rappaport, he plays for Edgar Winter, and he put it. He said, "These things come, but are you going to be ready for the opportunity when it presents itself?" And that's your job.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm saying about doing the work. Put the work in. I mean, I still practice every day, and I practice things I'm not good at. I don't practice the stuff I'm good at. That happens when I go and do a session, or I go and perform, or I teach. That stuff I know. So the stuff I don't know, or I feel I'm on the back foot with, is the stuff I practice, and I practice every day. I practice today. I'll practice tomorrow. And I'll practice. And occasionally I have a day off, and because it's just good for the brain to go, no more information today.
Yeah. Are you 100% self-taught?
Yes and no, in the sense that I was told by my peers, Alan Darby being one of them, because Alan and I go back a long, long way, that when I was like 16, apparently, I mean, I can't remember any of this because I was in it, if you know what I mean. Yeah. They said I had incredible chops, but I used to practice like a maniac, sort of obsessively practice for hours and hours a day because I could. And but the musicality, the theory and the harmony and the reading and all that sort of stuff really came mainly from this guy, two guys, one guy called Jimmy Elliott, who taught me when I was about 11 for about a year, and then Lachlan McCall, who still, every time I go and visit Lachlan, who lives in Edinburgh, he still says he never taught me anything. But I know that's a lie, because every time I go there, he teaches me something. And I go, wow, that's a really interesting way of looking at that chord sequence. Oh, I never thought of that. Oh, substitution of that chord. So, yeah, I'm self-taught, but I've had some amazing direction. And I've learned a load of stuff. I mean, Paul Stacey, the guitar player, is a real good friend.
Yeah, interviewed Paul.
Yeah, and he's taught me lots of things by just hanging out with him and jamming with him. He's just, going, what are you doing there? And he's going, well, I'm doing, right, okay, so doors open. And I study, because I love it, because I'm still trying to become the guitar player I'll never become. Right. That's the goal of. Yeah, of course. Yeah. As long as I continue to still trying to be that guitar player I'll never become, I think that's a good thing, and I'll continue working at it. And when you perform, sometimes I'm sure other musicians have said this. If you can get yourself into the zone, which is that place where it's like you're looking at what you're doing, it's as if you're detached from your body. And you seem to be able to hear everything, and you have a musical idea and you can follow it through. It just seems to occur. Now that's where it's being mapped out for you. It's like you've made a connection with something, and that's what I'm working towards, to try and get to that place every time I perform. Nearly impossible, I would say, but it happens every so often, and that, I suppose, it's a bit like the best drug on the planet,
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, I want to go there again, soon.
Yeah. That's cool that I have this school's never out for the pro, man. That's why I think, you always want to be better at something that you're doing that means something to you. I
remember seeing Mike Stern came and did a masterclass. I got to interview him, actually, which was really nice. And I'd seen him play at the Bar 55 in New York.
Oh, sure.
And, up close and personal there. And then I got to speak to him. And first thing he said is, because he was at BIM, he says, we're all students of guitar, man. We're all still students, And I thought, yeah, you're absolutely right. We are. I was behaving like that, but I hadn't put it into those words. But that's absolutely right. I'm still a student of the guitar. Yeah, I'm still a student of music. I just happen to play guitar. I want to mention or go through some artists that you've worked with, and if you talk about how you got the gig and like maybe a cool or interesting or unusual story about working with them. Leo Sayer, is he English? I didn't even know he was English. Yes, he's English. And it comes from Shoreham-on-Sea, which is near Brighton. And I got the gig by being a session player. So he was in America. He was living and working out of Los Angeles at the time. And I was about 23 when I got the gig. And what had happened was his management got in touch with the fixer that happened to be my fixer and said, we're looking for, a young upcoming guitar player. Leo's going to do a world tour. And it was just after he'd released, I think it was Thunder in My Heart. The album had just come out with, or or was it When I Need You was on it? I can't remember.
Was that the big hit? That was his big hit at least here. In the
States. And You Make Me Feel Like Dancing was.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was around that time. So I was flown out to Los Angeles without ever auditioning. They took it, the word of my fixer, that this guy was going to be good. And, so at 23,
holy shit.
At that point, having never been to America, I was flown to Los Angeles to start rehearsals, for this world tour. And I was, obviously in heaven.
Yeah. So
in fact, it was round about this time. It was because I remember the Oscars were on the day I arrived or the night I arrived, the Oscars were being broadcast on TV in Los Angeles. So it must have been around about February sometime.
So you're flown over to LA. So it's just like a couple of guitars and your suitcase full of clothes, and then you're off to tour the world.
Three or four guitars, and they said, we'll get amps out in America when you come to the rehearsal. And in fact, I then ordered a Mesa Boogie Mark I, which was through Randall Smith. Got that, and I was when I went back home, I was one of the first guys, not the only, but was one of the first guys in London certainly to have a Mesa Boogie Mark I, because they were, boutique custom amps out of California, and they were, the things that people sought. Larry Carlton was using them, so it's like whatever Larry Carlton used at the time, you wanted to.
Yeah. Wow. So, what was that like? You go on your first. So that's amazing, man. Like you're. See, this was mind-boggling to me because I didn't live a life like this. I had. I was married with almost a kid shortly after that at 23. So you fly over there and now you're touring the world. What was that like? What's going through your mind?
Well, what was going through my mind on a few occasions was, can I do this?
Sure.
On a couple of occasions, I was like, oh, God, I'm the youngest person in this band. Everybody else in the band really seems experienced. And, we had Don Preston in the band, who still remains a friend of mine from the Mothers of Invention, one of the keyboard players. Sure. At the time, I had Richard Baker, who had been playing with Santana, a New Zealand drummer called Frank Gibson, who's still, anyway, a guy called Cuco Lopresti, who played with Elton for a little while, and a bunch of other people, and then a guy called Kenny Altman. I mean, it was just, yeah. And in fact, Errol Slick came and took over from me at one point. I had to go home because you just said at 23, I also was married and had a kid, and already at 23. So
oh my God.
I had to go back to England at one point, and Errol took over for a bit. So I first met Errol. I haven't seen him for years, but he took over. He was hired to do that. Who weirdly enough was working with Jim Diamond, the same guy that was producing Zootman. So what you're saying about it being a small world is
crazy, man. Holy shit! Wow.
So, yeah. So I mean, but what it also did, and I think if there's any younger players listening to this, always try and put yourself in a situation of working with people that are more mature musicians or better than you. It's going to pull you up. It's going to lift you up to a different level. It's one of the most important things you can do. Throw yourself in the fire. That's what you need to do. I mean, I was thrown into the fire there, and I was really knocked out that it happened. But, in my first night, I went to the Baked Potato and met Jay Graydon, and, I think I met Steve Lukather. I can't remember.
Well, he probably can't either. Don't feel bad.
Yeah. And, the evening, I think Lee Ritenour was playing on stage, and I was just like, wow, these are people I was reading about who were in this fantasy land, and now I'm actually with them. It was extraordinary. Yeah. That's
so cool. Any interesting stories from that time period with Leo?
Well, I met Charlie's Angels on our first showcase before we went on tour.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
One of them chatted me up, or so I believed.
There you go. It happened, man. I'm sure.
So I'm going to believe that to the rest of my days.
Absolutely.
I mean, to be honest, Craig, so many different things over the years. It's I don't know. Well, being on tour and just visiting and play. Well, I mean, yeah. On one occasion, here's one thing that happened to us. Leo was a big star, so we were playing big auditoriums, but usually on the bill there was another band. And I remember Frank and I arriving, and we were they gave us limousines because he was a big star, so he would be in a limousine. Sometimes he'd be in a limousine with us, but Frank and I were in this limousine backstage at the Enormo Dome, as the story goes. And we get out and we're talking away, and we're walking up the ramp into the backstage area, and the support band is on, and we hear all this. We're like, shit, that sounds like fucking Tower of Power, because we didn't know who was on the bill each night, And we went up the ramp, looked at the side of the stage, and it was Tower of Power. So we were now shitting ourselves because we had to go on after Tower of Power, who are, in our opinion, were just godlike, So anyway, we get on and we do our bit, and they're all watching us from the side of the stage. So, which is even worse.
Yeah.
Oh no, don't check us out, Then we go backstage, and they come into the dressing room and go, "Hey guys, amazing!" And we're staying at the same hotel, so we hung out with them, And for me, that was there's another moment of wow, this is extraordinary life that's happening to me, an extraordinary life, and stuff like that. It's just meeting these people that if you realize that I still saw myself and still do sometimes as this farmer's kid from Scotland, and so these were there's living the dream, man. It's living the dream. I was living the dream.
Yeah.
It was mind-boggling, and I loved it. And I tried to learn. I learned some bad habits as well from some of the older musicians, but I also learned some good habits from them also.
Jack Bruce, who, in my opinion, is just not only a great writer, but a tremendous, tremendous bass player and singer, and just an amazingly talented human being.
And I mean, Jack was.
He's in Scotland. He's from Scotland, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I met Jack through Pete Brown because of connection. And what happened with Jack was it was just a recording session, and I got into this extraordinary situation where for a little period of time, some guys wanted to manage me, and I obviously met Jack through Pete, and so I managed to persuade Jack, who was the nicest guy, if he would come and play bass for me on this recording session.
Holy shit. Yeah. You're a good salesman, man.
Yeah. He said, only if I can bring my band, which included Simon Phillips on drums, Tony Hymas on keyboards, and myself on guitar. And, oh God, I'm having a senior moment. Oh God, this is really embarrassing. He was another his guitar player. It'll come back to me. This is ridiculous as well because we know each other really well. And it was the first time I'd met him. Hugh Burns, who played on Baker Street. He was a guitar player on Baker Street. He was in Jack's band. Thank God I remembered Hugh's name.
Can I tell you something? This is the third interview in a row where someone's mentioned Baker Street to me.
Oh, right, yeah.
So after the second time, I went and looked for the guitar player, and I think is Hugh Burns? Is he still around?
Yeah, I can put you in touch.
I have to because I can't hear something three times in a row. Yeah. I mean, that's not like a song that people are thinking about now. 3 interviews in a row, 2 of them, one was Jim Cregan, and then one was a young lady out in California of singer-songwriter. So that was too weird. Yeah. I can't ignore that.
Anyway, Hugh was the other guitar player, and we recorded some songs in the studio, which never came out. They were engineered by a guy called Dennis Weinrich, an American guy who's lived in London for many, many years. Great producer and engineer. And so, I sort of became friendly with Jack, and I would jam with him up at his house. Sometimes he used to live up near Colchester for a long time. And I'm still friendly with he lost one of his sons. One of his sons passed away, Joey, but I'm still friendly with his Jack's first wife and his other son Malcolm. So yeah, that's how that one went. But yeah, it was he was an incredible all-round musician. Really just one of those people that heard everything. Could hear it all and could hear all the parts, and could play lots of different instruments really well, and was trained, could read music, and very encouraging. Very encouraging, really. Just go for it, man. He would always go, yeah, come on, yeah, go on, do it, man, do it.
What a voice, even. It was such a beautiful voice he had. I mean, it's incredible.
That was the thing, really. Obviously his bass playing and all the stuff he did with Cream was amazing, but his voice was the thing that really attracted me, first of all, because it was like that falsetto he used to sing in as well, which was just stunning. Yeah, really, really great musician. Yeah. Sorely missed. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. So Donovan, now that's another interesting one.
Well, this is a really weird one because I got hired by Donovan's daughter to do a gig, and we were rehearsing, and lo and behold, who walks into the rehearsal room but Donovan? Now, I didn't know it was Donovan's daughter at the time.
Oh.
And so he walks in and he says, "So hi guys, my name's Donovan," and we were like, "Yeah, we know that." So his daughter was going to support him on a gig. So what happened then was he just sort of heard what we were doing, and when we eventually got to the gig and he was doing this solo thing, he came to me and the drummer and the bass player and said, "Look, when I do my set, do you want to come up and play in the second half with me?" And we were like, "Yeah, but we haven't rehearsed any." He said, "Oh, you'll know it all." So, we did some stuff with him. And then we did a couple of other gigs, doing a similar thing with him. And then he came and played at a gig only a couple of years ago for the bass player Danny Thompson, who played with John Martin. It was Danny's birthday party, and Donovan came along and played at that. So it was nice to see him again. But yeah, that's how that one happened. That was extraordinary.
What year was that?
With Donovan's daughter, that will have been, oh God, where are I? I mean, about 2010, maybe something like that. I'm not sure. Now you're asking,
I know. I just meant a range. I was just curious. Yeah, that's wild. What are the chances? It must have been, and then when you find out it's his daughter, that must have been really funny.
It was great that she hadn't said anything.
Yeah. It's more natural.
So we were just playing for this girl that was going to do some gigs, And we knew it was at the Jazz Cafe, which is a place in London, one of the gigs in London. Good gig. And so then he just walks into the rehearsal room, So
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
How about Pete Townshend?
Well, Pete, that was quite extraordinary because what happened was I got hired by a great musical director called Simon Webb, who's still a good pal, to do the first ever Tommy show at the Queen's Theatre in London. And Pete was around, and because obviously he'd written the thing. And what happened then was that Pete asked me, he sort of came over to me after the first sort of couple of weeks of the show one evening and said, "Do you want to come and do some sessions for me at Eel Pie Studios?" So
holy shit.
Yeah, which is pretty extraordinary because,
that's where everything.
When I was 13 and I heard, I Can See for Miles for the first time, the last track on the Who Sell Out album, which was a sort of, this is where we're going now sort of sound. And here he was going, "Do you want to come and do some sessions for me?" I was like, "But surely you can play guitar, Pete."
Yeah.
But of course, the thing about Pete is that he can also engineer and produce and write and play keyboards and everything and sing and so he wanted someone else to play a bit of guitar, so I did that. And then his wife of the time was doing a charity concert, and he asked me to do the charity concert with him as well. So I did that. So that was a live show at the Dominion Theatre in London, which was great. And, off and on, and in fact, I saw Pete a week and a half ago because his now wife, Rachel Fuller, who's a composer, a classical composer, was performing something at Piccadilly, St. James's Church in Piccadilly. And I went along because I was invited along to it, and went along there and said hello. And I've seen him a couple of times, so we sort of, I mean, we're not on the phone to each other.
You guys aren't on social media. You're not like
but we
Facebook
see
messaging?
each other on occasions. Yeah,
It's so cool.
Yeah, so that was a great experience. Obviously,
you mentioned about his engineering, and I mean, some of the stuff like on Who's Next. That was like, the Baba O'Reilly, the opening to that was.
It was extraordinary. It was like, that's the thing. He incredibly creative. I mean, I suppose the way I would like to describe it is that hidden behind the big rock, and all that sort of stuff that's going on, is an incredible musical mind, very educated musical mind, who I think is. Apart from the fact, I mean, I've got to say that I think Pete Townshend's got to be one of the finest guitar players on the planet. His rhythm guitar playing and feel is sensational. He also thinks he's not a great lead guitar player, which I don't agree with. So I think he's a great lead guitar player. But, his rhythm playing and his ideas and his chord voicings and all that sort of stuff, just amazing, amazing. But bigger than that is all the other stuff that, like Jack as well, you're just a bigger musician, so much more going on, capable of doing just extraordinary things and coming up with ideas that certainly, as you say, Baba O'Reilly, all that sequence of stuff. It was like, I think Tomita had an album out, which was I think he was a Japanese sort of synth player round about the same time, because obviously Pete had, Don Preston from the Mothers was using Moogs and all that sort of, he was into all that sort of stuff as well. But Pete had sort of harnessed it, and turned it into something that was very usable in a rock environment, which nobody else had done before. It was all experienced before. And he'd made it really work. And, when you hear, them live, obviously, when the sequencers start, it's just amazing. It's like such a beautiful sound, it's fantastic. No, I tip my hat to these people,
Well, not only is he a great lead guitarist, he's so, like, when he plays, it's Pete, which is like.
He totally has his own voice, completely honestly. Yeah, there's nobody like him. And, that's what makes, there was nobody like Jack. That's what makes these people unique. There is nobody like them. They have a very, very, from the get-go, they seem to have a very strong own voice. You know what I mean? It's like they just appeared with that voice. It's like they didn't seem to have to work at it. They must have done, but we never heard it before. When they recorded for the first time, it was there, Some people it takes years to develop,
Well, it's like if you look at my favorite player is Gilmour. I mean, he just has done it for me my whole life. But if you look at the evolution of him in Floyd, to me, he didn't become like David Gilmour today until Echoes.
Yeah.
But there was a slew of albums before that where it sounded great, and I love his playing, and I listen to it still in my rotation, but it was not, to me anyway, what he's been since then.
Yeah, so he, yes, I suppose in many ways that what happened with him was he developed, and developed in a great direction. Some people can develop in the wrong way, they can take a left turn and it goes a bit pear shaped, and they get a bit they lose that initial thing that they have or had. But no, he certainly develops. Yeah, I mean, fantastic.
Yeah.
I've never been lucky enough to meet him or work with him, but I know a lot of other people who have. He's great. Yeah.
And then talk about Snuffy Walden, and then just for people listening, Snuffy on Free's last album called Heartbreaker. I guess Paul Kossoff's drug problem was so bad he couldn't finish a lot of the songs, and Snuffy came in there on a few tracks, I think, and did all the guitar work.
Yeah, Snuffy was living in London at the time, in a three-piece band whose name escapes me, but and he'll berate me for this if he hears this. But I think it was something Dog. I can't remember, but anyway. He got hired and he played on that, and he did a fantastic job. But I didn't know him at that time. I actually ended up meeting Snuffy in Los Angeles. We were booked to do an album together, for a guy called Alan Love, who I'd met on the Tommy show, who Pete Townshend had introduced me to, and Bill Curvishley, who was then the Who's manager. I don't know if he is still anymore, but he certainly was then. Had decided to take Alan on, and so we were in Los Angeles, and Snuffy turned up and played on this record with me, and we became friends. And then over the years, as Snuffy, for the listeners that don't know, Snuffy has written The West Wing, The Wonder Years, 30-something, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And is a very, very fine guitar player. He taught me a lot of stuff as well, just about etiquette in the studio, and just a way to, just a really, really very experienced man, really genuine guy, beautiful musician, beautiful guy. And he came to London recently, and we hooked up again. It was really nice to see him. And next time I'm out in Los Angeles, I will definitely be giving him a call.
That's cool, man. They actually, I think, made a movie of him. There's some documentary floating around.
There is a documentary. In fact, he was in London doing some of the doc. That's partly what he was doing, because he was over here to see Rabbit, John Bundrick, because he was in a band. He was in a band, I think, originally in Texas with Rabbit. And so there was a whole band that Snuffy had come from, because he's from Texas originally. Snuffy.
Very cool, man.
He's great. He's a really cool man. Yeah.
What would you say, if it's even possible, Les, like the top 3 experiences you've had musically for any reason? Like maybe you were in the zone, or the hang, the people involved, or the magnitude of the audience, whatever float your boat.
Oh God, there's been so many over the years, really, in different experiences that. I'm just trying to think. Oh God. Just being able to meet some of these players that I've always really, really respected in itself, the ones we've been talking about, has been incredible, because once again, I always default to going back to being a fan of music and a fan of these people. And then when you get the chance to actually work with them, and they seem to like what you do, it's that in itself is the most incredible experience. That's the affirmation of are you any good? Yeah. Well, you must be fairly good, because these people I've said come and do this. I suppose first time you look out at a massive crowd in a stadium show, and it's a sort of done deal, really, because you're playing with an artist that they love. As soon as you hit the first chord, they're going, hooray! It's amazing.
Any particular show that sticks out?
Playing Red Rocks with Joan Armatrading was great. That was really a cool night. And a weird experience. I used to play with another guy called Shakin' Stevens, who didn't really do much in America, but he did a lot in Britain and Europe. He was a big star for a while, and he doesn't really record that much anymore. But because he looked a bit like Elvis, and if you check him out, you can see that he was a really handsome guy, and so it was mostly mothers and girls in the audience. And the very first gig I ever did with him was in Chile, actually, in Vina del Mar, but it was a slightly different audience there. And then we went back to Britain and started a British tour, and the curtains opened, and I heard this sound, and I'd never heard this sound before. So we're playing to maybe 10,000 people or something, and I heard this sort of sound that started with a sort of, and it was only after I'd done that first gig I realized it was thousands of women and girls screaming
for Shakin' Stevens.
And so this sound comes on the stage because you're enclosed, on the stage area, it comes at you. And so it's really, when you've never experienced it before, it's the most extraordinary thing. I mean, screaming, it must have been like that for the Beatles every night, But I'd certainly never experienced it before. Most stages would shuffle onto,
Sure.
we'd start and then the crowd would sort of get going. But this was as soon as the curtains opened, it was like, because he had these big drapes, the drapes would fall away and the band would kick in,
I have to look this guy up.
They just went ballistic.
Shakin' Stevens.
Yeah, Shakin' Stevens, yeah. He had several number ones in Europe and England, but he never really did anything in America, I suppose, probably because of Elvis, obviously, It'd be like trying to sell coals to Newcastle, as they say. So, yeah. That and meeting Tina Turner for the first time, that was extraordinary. She burst into a rehearsal room, ran up to me, put her arms around me, and was holding the microphone with her arm around me, going, "Sing with me, honey, sing with me." And I was
so cool.
Yeah, I was going. Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty wild stuff. And yeah, I mean, lots of different things on the way. I mean, too many, Craig, to sort of mention really, but
sure.
But yeah, it's been, I've been a really lucky guy. I have been a really lucky guy. Lots of, I mean, if I wrote it down on paper, like, what would I like to do as a musician? Have I achieved it? Yes. Would I change anything? Very little. Most of it I wouldn't change. A few things I would change, but very little I would change. It's all been pretty incredible experience, and I've certainly been lucky enough, and I really, focus on that, being lucky enough to have lived a life, lived a big life. And what you talked about earlier, sometimes I think, is it me, or has this been, has this been laid out for me? I don't know what's happening. It's cool, and even today, great things happen, still amazing things happen. I'm very, very grateful, very grateful.
To the extent you're comfortable, what would you have changed? You mentioned that a few things you would have changed.
I certainly would have changed in my younger days. I still suffer from it sometimes. That desire for recognition and affirmation, and which I think I've been around long enough for me to, I think I can safely say that most musicians probably require that, because if you're practicing by yourself and you're bearing your soul as your performance or your recording or whatever, you want people to like it, So
for sure.
It's logical, But what I would have changed is not to be so focused on that and to follow my heart completely and utterly and believe in myself. One of the things that happens to me when I'm doing a lot of teaching is I'm constantly saying to the students, do you believe in yourself? And if you do and you work hard, you can do this. This can be your life. And I try and say, well, look, this is all I've ever done since the age of 16, sort of removed from school because I wasn't going. So they said, don't bother coming back. So I became a professional guitar player, which I'd always wanted to be since about the age of 11, maybe. Not wanting to, not worrying about it, just getting on, just doing it and getting on with it, and trying to develop your own voice, and just to really be, okay, are you working? Yes. That, are people still continually employing you pretty much all the time? Yes. Okay. You've got to be doing something right. Don't worry about it. And don't ask other people, don't bore other people going, was that okay? That sort of thing. Because, so that's...
It's hard to do when you're young. You have such little... living gives you confidence, and you don't have much of it.
You have low self-esteem when you're younger, and
sure.
and you're trying to just learn what it's about and how to do it, and and so that I would change, because that used to bug me. I used to because and so therefore I would say that trying to perfectionism, forget it. Don't even think about perfectionism. I saw a great podcast by one of the guys in Snarky Puppy, who said a comedian he'd read somewhere, or he'd seen another podcast or something, where somebody had said perfectionism breeds procrastination, which breeds paralysis. And, that is what I suppose a lot of musicians suffer from, in my opinion, just my opinion, but in my opinion, certainly when you're younger, we suffer from it. And it's actually quite detrimental. If you just go, hey, am I doing the work? Am I getting gigs? Am I paying the bills? Am I got a roof over my head? I've got food in my belly. It's working, So, and, when you get up to higher levels, it's, other things happen and other things you got to deal with, but certainly your jobbing musician, which I classify myself as really, is just, don't try not to worry about it too much, because if it's happening, it's happening.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
Yes.
You mentioned that you grew up on a farm in Scotland. Where did you grow up? What was the name of the?
Well, just on the outskirts of Edinburgh, a place called the Old Dalkeith Road. And it was a small holding farm. It was mainly a pig farm, but all my uncles, or a couple of uncles, were butchers or other farmers. So, like in the lambing season in Easter, I would be sent to one of the other uncles and, do a bit of lambing, which was, it was great. I think of all that stuff with great fondness, and it taught me a huge amount about life, amazingly enough, As
well, you learned to work, man. You're on a farm.
You're 365 days a year, no matter what the weather, Yeah. So I'd come home, because at first I was doing some work with my dad on the farm, I'd come home from gigs, perhaps having imbibed, the night before, after the gig, on some sort of fuel that was probably not legal.
Sure, man.
And have to, be up at 5:30, 6 in the morning working on the farm. So that was an experience in itself. But it was, But it was good. And I've got a brother and a sister who are older. They didn't end up the farm. It's a long story, so I won't bore you with the details. But the farm eventually was no more because they had a thing called foot and mouth, which is a disease.
Oh yeah. Oh my God! So your stock there got foot and mouth.
Yeah. Oh. So it happened twice in the space of 3 years. So my father decided not to do it anymore, and neither me, my brother, or my sister decided to take it on the farm. So so that was the end of that. But in the long run, it and in fact, I must say that my dad was amazing, because he didn't understand, being a farmer, that I wanted to be a musician. He didn't really, because he wasn't a musician. He didn't understand. But he gave his blessing to me. He said that he, being the oldest boy, his father, made him be a farmer. He couldn't go and, maybe follow some of the other avenues he might have wanted to, but he understood that I wanted to, and he gave his blessing, which I'll always be grateful for.
That is so cool. I will tell you that, people often ask me, what's the number? What do great guitar players have in common? I would say almost 100%. Almost 100% had tremendous support from their family. Even if there was dysfunction in the house, if somebody was an alcoholic or a drug addict or whatever, almost 100% had really strong support. In fact, I've probably interviewed 450 people, maybe less than 5 did not.
Yeah, I think. Yes, I mean, my mother had been a dancer in her youth, and so I think she was the one that was a bit more like, I think he's got something. And then I did a radio broadcast, funnily enough, with that guy Pete Atkin I talked about all that time for the BBC, and my mother heard it, and she was like, okay, she was convinced, because this is the BBC, he's on the BBC. This is the pinnacle, And then my father came and saw me play, funnily enough, with Leo Sayer at the biggest venue in Edinburgh. And when Leo introduced me and said he's from Edinburgh on guitar, the place went berserk.
Oh, I'm sure. That must have been really cool, right?
Yeah. And
that had to feel great.
For him.
For your dad.
He was my son, and that convinced him, although he was convinced before, but that really, those two things really helped. And I have to say, my brother and sister, because my older brother was a singer. He doesn't anymore, but played a bit of guitar. And my sister, they both loved music and blues and rock and roll. And so, me being the youngest, I got to hear a lot of records I would never have been able to purchase because they were able to get them. And so I heard them. So I heard, just trying to think what I probably heard. Probably like very early Kinks records, Elvis, Heartbreak Hotel. My brother bought Heartbreak Hotel virtually as soon as it was available in Britain, and so on and so forth, And so I was exposed to that sort of music very, very early. I must have been, let me see, my brother, I must have been maybe 8 years old when I was starting to hear that stuff, which, is the perfect, if you're going to be a contemporary musician, that's the perfect groundwork for it,
Is your brother and sister still in Scotland, or are they in England?
No, my brother's still in Scotland. My sister is in Wiltshire, which is west of London.
I know it is,
100 miles west. She, I go and see my brother pretty much once or twice a year. He tends not to come down to London. He doesn't like London. That's fine. My sister lives a very domestic, quiet country life, and she loves it, and I go and see her, and that's great. Yeah,
that's cool, man. Isn't Wiltshire like the biggest county in England? Something like that?
Don't ask me one about Hendrix. I have no idea about that.
This is an odd fact I remember reading because I had just met someone from Wiltshire, so I know more useless information than anybody. Don't worry. Very cool, man. What were some of the lower points or the biggest obstacles you've had to deal with throughout your career, and how did you manage to get through them? Either music, business, personal, whatever you decide to choose.
Well, I think the first thing that any musician suffers from is when work dries up, and it does, especially when you're a gun for hire, as I like to call it. You can become flavor of the month with a bunch of producers, and you work on loads and loads of stuff, and then suddenly the phone stops ringing, and you don't know why. And because you've been busy with these people, you haven't really necessarily spread your wings with other people. And or the other thing, you can go away on a world tour and you can be away for a year, and you come back and somebody who was waiting in the wings has taken your gig. And so these things are hard to handle, but the way I handled them was I tended to sort of accept that this was because I'd learned that stuff early on about the curve, and also I would use that opportunity to do some woodshedding, do some practicing, and get, just try and practice through it. Okay, let's try and take this opportunity to do something positive, or in the case of me, spend some more time with my children. I've got grandchildren, which is amazing. So, to try and utilize that time. Certainly one of the lowest points for me as well was when my second wife passed away from cancer, just over 10 years ago. That was really hard. To feel the required spirit sometimes to keep going, and people around you would be, you go to a rehearsal and everybody, people mess around at rehearsals, they have fun, they have a laugh, and I felt sorry, sort of slightly distant, like in a bubble from everybody for a while, but like everything, it passes, So, I would say anybody listening, no matter what happens to you in your life, in your professional life or your professional life, as good old George Harrison said, all things must pass, and they do. And if you try and keep a positive spin on it, and sometimes you have to try to keep a positive spin, I think, stuff comes good. Once again, it goes back to that thing I was talking about earlier about, if you're thinking good things and you're trying to do good things seem to happen. If you hang out in a bad part of the town and do bad things, bad shit happens. It's that simple, So, I think that's probably my philosophy is during the difficult times, dig deep. I remember, the tennis players talking about that, and they're getting beaten at Wimbledon or something, and afterwards they say, well, I dug deep, I was down 2 sets down and I won, How did that happen? Well, I dug deep. So all the practicing you do, you can, that, because I think a lot of practicing is a bit like, meditation. because you're doing it by yourself and you're really focused. So, trying to think about being focused about what you want to do and not to get knocked off the path by circumstance. And it can be hard, and I'd be lying to say that there hasn't been moments that have been very difficult, and periods that have gone from feast to famine and back again. I think all top players, can I classify myself as that? I don't know.
Yeah, you can.
All players, certainly go through that at some point. And I think even when they become very successful and maybe money is not a particular problem anymore, they've still got the same stuff going on in their head. They're still, and maybe even more pressure because if they've just had a really successful record and tour, they've got to top it next time. That's what the public expects, and that must be a pressure that I haven't had to deal with. But I've worked with people who have, there's been tough times, but there's been great times, and I'm sure there'll be others to deal with.
Yeah. But, thank you very much for sharing that, man. I'm terribly sorry that you had to go through that, man.
Thank you. No, that's fine.
Let's talk about some music and guitars. What are some of the best concerts you've seen?
Right. Okay. I thought about this and I've written them down here. So in order. You're
very well prepared, Les. You get it.
That's about the only thing I'm prepared with.
E for excellent on this test.
Led Zeppelin's first British tour.
That's amazing, man. Holy shit.
Yeah. So seeing that was pretty incredible.
So Jimmy was playing a Telecaster?
Yes, he was playing a Telecaster.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And he was also playing, what was he playing? Dan Electro, I think. And John Paul Jones obviously got up and played acoustics and was also playing a Hammond. And
so fucking cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. They were doing things like Communication Breakdown and Days and Yeah, it was stunning.
Let me ask you a question. Sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just thought of something. Was weed? They had weed at concerts there, right? Like, what was that like back in the day?
Sorry, say that again.
Like weed, pot. Was that present?
Not at that. Not at this particular. In an open air concert, it would have been, but not in a closed environment, which I saw them. And no, you couldn't smoke. You weren't allowed to smoke. No. And the where I saw them was a place called the Usher Hall in Edinburgh, which was actually a classical gig most of the time. No, they were very strict on that. Yeah. So no.
And now, what are they like now in a closed place?
Yeah, a lot of yes, and well, you're not allowed to smoke. In enclosed places, obviously, and the same in America, Oh,
but there's always someone.
I'm sure it goes on. Yeah, I'm sure it goes on, but I'm sure it does. But it wasn't in those days. I think people just used to, get high and then go in.
Right.
The other two concerts that really have stuck in my mind was I saw Muddy Water play. And because some of my earliest trying to sound like Muddy Water and Howlin' Wolf and Big Bill Brunsey and people like that. That was my earliest sort of, when I heard blues for the first time, it was like, this is what I want to do. Because some of the pop records I was hearing were like, they're okay, but then I'm hearing real blues. And I heard those guys before I heard Albert King and B.B. King and Freddie King.
Oh, okay.
So seeing Muddy, he was an old man, but he was still so powerful. It was unbelievable. Incredible.
Was, I'm having a brain fart now. Bob, who is his guitarist with him?
You know what? To this day, I cannot remember who it was. It was a festival at Alexandra Palace in London, and I've got a feeling it might have even been a pickup English band. I don't remember. My memory is just muddy. Just how incredible he was, just doing all the, Mannish Boy and Wants to Be Loved and all the the stuff from that time. So I can't. There wasn't anybody that really stood out to me that in the band. I think it was probably a pickup band, but he certainly did. And then Weather Report with Jacko, I saw that maybe
Jackal. That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, God, wow. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I mean, there's many other concerts, but those ones, when I looked at the, best, top 3 concerts, well, they all came into my head. So,
Thank you, man. That's cool. Guitars. What's your, well, I'm going to ask you this because you said you practice every day. What did you last practice? Like, what are you working on now?
What I'm working on at the moment really is I work on playing through changes, because I'm playing through jazz tunes, get my chops and playing changes, and reading, and then ear training, So I sort of work on these 3 things because I feel personally, whether I'm right or wrong, that these are 3 of the weakest things for me. And as I said earlier, I like to practice things I'm not good at, and then they get better, and the level goes up. So but it's a funny thing because you can have a good ear on one day, and another day your ear just doesn't seem to do what it did the day before. You can't hear quite so well. Not hearing all the intervals so easily. And reading is another thing. Reading, I say you have good reading days and bad reading days. So if you're trying to sight read something, and I wouldn't call myself a sight reader, I'd call myself a reader, but not a sight reader. A lot of people, guitar players, as you know, because you obviously play guitar, it's, if you ever tried to sight read, it's a very difficult instrument to sight read on because you play the same thing minimum places and sometimes 4. And so which one do you choose? Where do you start? And we've got a lot of stuff to do. We've got to play all these different styles. So that, that's a sort of ongoing project. I also teach it. So it's a good thing to be honed, to be refined, so.
What do you do for ear training? Like
for ear training, I sometimes use an app where I'll basically, there's a couple of good apps there where they'll play a note and it's not in the same key. So it's a root note, but the key is moving. And then it will play, a third or a minor third or a minor 6 or a major 6 or a major 7 or a flat 5 or a sharp 9 or whatever, it's going to be. And then you've got to say what you think it is and then press the button and it'll go right or wrong.
Oh, that's really cool.
And if you're right and wrong, if you're wrong, it plays what it should have been. You can press a button that says this is it, and if you're right, it just goes right anyway, and then you can still have a listen to it. So, and then chords, and another way to do that is to get together with a buddy and sit back to back and just play a chord and say, "What's that?"
That's very cool.
Yeah, and then the other thing you can do is, you can learn. There's a great system of. There's lots of songs, like Twinkle, Twinkle. There's a 5th, no star, do dee dee dee. The famous sort of 3/4 thing. Do dee. There's a 3rd, do da, minor 3rd. All that sort of stuff. So, and Frank Sinatra goes, and now there's a major 6. All that,
so little hacks.
Yeah, and so they're really useful for ear training because you start to recognize stuff.
Okay.
But like I say, the ear can behave funnily sometimes, especially mine because I'm getting deaf.
That could impact things. Your ear training.
The same thing as being able to, you can still hear the interval. So I use that as a weak excuse for making mistakes. I'm deaf. No, you're not.
What is that app called? Because I think people would want
to. It's called Ear Trainer.
Ear Trainer. Okay, great. Not a lot of people into that. It's funny. My wife is losing her hearing in one of her ears. I walk into the room last night. I'm like, holy shit. Who's listening to this TV? The people across the street? It was so loud. I'm like,
yeah. I know. Oh. Well, I've actually, and this is a good thing to talk about with other musicians. Just before the end of last year, I bit the bullet because when I was in spaces with a lot of noise, a lot of background noise, I was beginning to find it really hard to hear because I've suffered from tinnitus for 20 odd years.
So does she, same exact thing.
Yeah. And so I bit the bullet and I went and got hearing aids.
Good for you.
And I've got 2 hearing aids and I was really nervous about wearing them at the school. It's been really accepted. And in fact, what's been good is quite a lot of students have come forward and said, maybe I need, we have a student who has not been attending because she couldn't hear very well, and she hasn't got hearing aids. And one of the other tutors said, look, maybe you could have a word with her. So I'm now, I went and got some really good ones that you've got an app on your phone so you can change your environment and you can change the EQ.
That's great.
Which, if you're going to get hearing aids, you should get that type. Don't spend the money and get really good ones, because bad hearing aids are a hindrance. They make everything sound quite digital, and if you can't control it, it can be very frustrating. But good hearing aids are actually really, really good.
Yeah. Good for you, man. I'm happy you did that. It's funny. I read this article in the paper, like, I don't know, about 2-3 years ago. I remember giving it to my wife, and about a woman who, had the same thing. She had tinnitus for a while, and then same thing. My wife's got the same thing as you. Background noise, forget it. Mm-hmm. And then she got the hearing aid, and the biggest thing, the realization was that she didn't realize how much she was missing.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
The first day I got them, I walked out of the place and they'd fitted them and they'd programmed them for me. And I walked out in the street and I was like, wow, I didn't realize it was so loud and noisy. And I was hearing things behind me I hadn't heard for years, people talking behind me. I wouldn't hear people talking behind me,
Yeah.
And I was a bit creepy at first because I felt like people were creeping.
Wait, that makes total sense, man. Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Yeah,
for sure.
But I would recommend, if anybody is suffering from it and is worried that they're going to, not be able to perform with hearing aids, or, I have done a couple of performances and it was fine. It takes a while to get used to them, and you have to tune them, you have to program them, get them programmed with the company. You get them with the good company will spend 6 or 7 visits until you start getting them programmed. And now I've really got a couple of different programs I use that are really useful.
That's great.
And you can Bluetooth it, through an app, and it's fantastic. I really, I partly regret still having some days I'm like, oh shit, I've got to put my hearing aids on before I go out. But
of course,
when I don't, and I suddenly go, I can't hear what some people are saying. People talk quietly. It's very difficult to hear them. And as I say, if there's a lot of background noise, it can be very difficult.
Yeah.
In that. So,
I'm sure some of that is like, because I know it myself, you see things and you're like, that happens to old people. Yeah. That's what it is. That, like, for me anyway, and I'm like, how is, this thing happening to me? Or, that's so, that for me anyway, that's part of it. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah. And it took me a while, it was really my friends, both musician and non-musician friends kept saying, we have to keep repeating ourselves, Les, I really think you should get hearing aids. I was like, no, I don't need hearing aids, because, that stigma, and eventually I got so pissed off with it. I just went, oh God, I'm going to go and do it, or I'm going to try it. Yeah. And I don't regret it. I must say, I do not regret it.
Thank you. I'm going to play this whole little part back to my wife because she needs to hear this. And she'll say, turn it up.
Put some more talk on it, can't you?
Guitars, man. Do you have a lot of guitars?
I've got about 25, something like that.
That's pretty reasonable for a guy who's but it's a really reasonable amount for as long and as much as you've done.
Yeah, but I used to have more, but I got rid of a lot of them because I started going fair weather guitars. I don't want any fair weather guitars.
Totally get that.
I just want however many, and ones I really loved, or one, I've been lucky enough to get, I got a 61 Strat when I was quite young because they were cheap in those days. And I've got a 57 Les Paul.
Holy shit.
61 345 and a 58 classical guitar. I've got some.
Oh my God, dude, you've got
the
holy trinity.
Yeah. So I don't, and a custom telly, custom shop telly, which is a real beaut, and another custom shop Strat, and George Benson and a bunch of other things, and also I use Fibonacci Guitars, which is a British guitar company, which is starting to do real business now. They're fantastic, mainly jazz guitars. And lots of good acoustics and various other bits and pieces, high-strung electrics and high-strung acoustics, and everything that I need. I've got Dissenbergs, and I've got pretty well. I'm lucky to have got everything that I don't sort of desire anything else now, which is great. There was a period where just buy anything, I think I'll have that, and then put it under the bed, so
yeah.
In that. But amps and pedals, I'm just as bad. I mean, I've got
No. The guy who's bad is Paul Stacey.
Oh yeah. Well,
he's got a studio. That's his justification.
Right. It's rubbed off on me, so I will hang out with Paul, and we'll go to music shops, and I will go there with no intention of buying a pedal or anything at all, and I will leave having bought a pedal,
Yeah.
But so will he, of course,
But he's got Paul, do you need 9 Vox amps? He's got like multiples.
Oh, yeah. I actually have some of his amps here at the moment, because he's left a couple of them here, and I bought a couple of them off him over the years. So yeah, I know that completely, and I try not to go there anymore. In fact, we have a sort of joke about it, and he'll go, "I've just seen this," I'm going, please don't talk to me about it. I'm too interested in it, but he knows his stuff, man, as well.
Oh, yeah. No, he's a really sharp guy with everything. He's a really bright guy, man.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite guitar of the ones you have? Give me the top 3. If you can. I know that's so hard. Or just the top 3, not in any particular order, even.
Well, the 61 Strat, obviously, the 61 345, and then after that, the Custom Shop Telly and the Les Paul. But the reason I put the Les Paul where I do is because the Les Paul is a very specific instrument to me. It's Les Pauls are a bit unwieldy. They're heavier. This one isn't particularly heavy, but it's heavy in the sense of I'm not going to do a whole gig with it, but I'll pull it out. Certainly on a lot of those, like the vintage guitars, I tend not to take them on the road. So I've got other instruments that that sort of deal with that situation. The custom shop things. I've got a really good SG, so sometimes I use that instead of the 57 Les Paul because I don't want to take that out.
Sure.
But in the studio situation, I'll pull it out for a sound, because it's got a particular Les Pauls. To me, have got a particular sound, great sound for certain things, so I'll use it in that. So, and then the jazz guitars, I use a Peerless, and I use a George Benson. I got a couple of Fibonacci's. So it depends what the gig is, It really depends what the gig is. I've been playing the Telecaster a lot because I particularly like this Telecaster because it's one of those guitars that seems to be able to do pretty much anything.
Do you have it handy there?
Yeah, I do.
Let me take a look if you don't mind. Oh, so it's a butterscotch.
Yeah.
It looks like a 53.
You see it?
Yeah. With black pick guard. Nice, man.
Yeah,
very nice.
It's a beautiful guitar.
Is that relict or did you wear that?
It's relict, but it's pretty, it's pretty standard in the sense of it's not heavily relics. It's and it'll get more relics.
I like the way the neck is. That's where I like the relicing up there. It looks good.
Yeah. And I like the fatter neck. You see, although I don't have particularly big hands, I like the fat neck. So yeah, it's a good one.
When a professional picks up a guitar and plays, it's like magic to me to listen to it because it's just the competency and the it's like I feel like I'm in good hands almost, like when you pick up your instrument, it's a comforting feeling as a listener, even if you're just noodling. It's very, very nice. It's just
there's a lot of muscle memory involved, and if you've been doing it a long time, which I have, you can pretty well, you're quite right. You appear confident with it because it becomes. I mean, certainly something happened to me at some point in my life where the guitar, when I picked it up, used to be this object that I'd pick up and I was trying to connect to. And then at some point in my life, I can't say when exactly, I became connected to it when I picked it up. And when that happened, it stayed. And I suppose if I didn't practice, it might go away. You know, if I got too old to play or whatever, you know, it might go away again. You know, but so I think that's what happens with any person who plays well or has played a long time and has lots of good muscle memory and, you know, just knows what they're doing, knows their way around the instrument. They pick it up and it's just they immediately go. It's part of them, you know.
Yeah, that's what it is, man. It's part of when you pick it up. It's part of you, and it's so evident as a listener to see that. Like when I pick it up, that's not what's going on.
Well,
you know.
Well, but I mean, it's like anything. If you know, there's an old saying: if you hang around in a hairdresser's long enough, you'll get a haircut. You know.
Yeah. Except me. Not me either. There, wrong guy. No, it's totally perfect. It was actually perfect. That was great. No. It's actually perfect. Wonderful. I'm laughing because if people don't notice, I got no hair, so that's what I think most people might know. But that was perfect, dude.
But it's like you know, if you do it enough, you know, you get good at it. But you got to do it every day, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
You know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour minimum, and then you know. But if you're a pro, you're hopefully playing. You know, sometimes I'll play when I'm teaching. Sometimes I'll play for 8 hours in a day, you know.
That's amazing. I wish I could do that. I really do. I would love to. It's such a great feeling when I play guitar. It's such a good feeling, man. And I made a commitment. I felt like a little duplicitous last year because I didn't practice as much. And here I am hosting this guitar show and I'm like, I didn't feel like ethically right. So I made and I never make New Year's resolutions. I'm not that guy. I'm like, fuck, I don't need a New Year's to say I need to do something. Right. But I said, I'm going to make sure though, I'm going to practice every day and I have every day. Sometimes it's been 2:00 in the morning, but I don't care if I'm getting at least a half hour to an hour every single day. And I noticed the difference because I'm learning. I'm still a baby with this. So,
well, like I said, we're still all students, you know, we're still, you know, it just depends how much you want to be, you know, on the road in the sense of parking up for a bit, you know, just you keep going, you know. And I mean, I think the bottom line for any person making music is if you enjoy making it, whether you're doing it professionally or not, you know, if that's the bottom line, do you enjoy it? You know, if you enjoy it, then that's fantastic because it's a language that a lot of people understand and it touches people, you know, there's a communication, emotional connection that people get from listening to music as well as playing it, you know, that is second to none, in my opinion. You know, I'm biased, of course, because I love doing it, you know, but that's what I feel. You know?
No, I agree with you 100%, man. Name a couple of guitar players that you've enjoyed playing with.
Well, Paul is one, obviously, because we do quite a lot of playing. There are many. There's a couple of other guys at the school, John Wheatcroft and Jim Clark, are fantastic musicians, great players. I mean, to be honest with you, I think the best way of explaining it is that anybody that I feel a musical empathy with is. And they don't have to be, they can be beginners, you know, or they can be, you know, giants, you know, and way above my ability, and they can be sax players, they can be keyboard players, they can be drummers, they can be singers, you know, they can be vibes players, they can be all sorts of different things, you know. So that's really hard, you know, to be specific. And the way I've answered it is about the best.
No, I totally get it. You answered it totally, absolutely fine. You ever sell a guitar you wish you can get back?
Oh God, yeah. Far too many. Weirdly enough, I had a beautiful Gem 777, an Ibanez, which because I'd sort of deal with Ibanez for a while in the early 80s. And that was a fantastic guitar. I wish I'd never sold that. And I've sold I sold a Gibson 335 I had many years ago. I also, two guitars, that, well, I sort of bought, and then the guy wanted it back before I'd finally paid for it. So that was a shame, because I'd done 1962 Salmon Pink Rosewood Neck Strat, which I bought off him. And then foolishly, I didn't give him all the money. And then when I came back from a little tour, I said, I'll give you the money at the end of the tour. And he was like, yeah, cool, And I came back from the end of the tour, and he got a publishing deal, and he said, no, I want the guitar back, so I'll give you the money back. You give me the guitar back. And I couldn't say no.
You could have said no.
Well, but,
I know, I'm the same way. I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
I would have been pissed about it, but I wouldn't,
Yeah, I was pissed.
You can't, because then you got it. It's bad karma anyway, Then
yes, I know. Once in America, actually, well, thankfully I didn't buy it, but I was offered. We were playing. I can't remember where we were. Somewhere near Nashville. I can't remember where it was, but we were playing. And a guy turned up at the hotel with a 58, dot inlay 335, and wanted to sell it for very little money. And I was really tempted, and it was original. And then you just used the word karma. I just suddenly thought, I think this might not be his.
Oh, he stole it.
I think so. Yeah. So he just, because obviously if he sold it to me, I would be away and gone with it, and I didn't buy it. So I regret not having it, but I don't regret not buying it.
Yeah, I totally get that. The 355 is the stereo. What is it? 345. How is that different than the
345 is the original stereo.
Okay.
But I've got that one wired like a 335, because we have a guy here in London called Bill Puplet, who's basically our god luthier, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion. Bill, is I think Bill's sort of 70 or something like that, and has been a luthier for many, many years, played in bands himself, has some beautiful guitars, some vintage guitars of his own. And he is the sort of the go-to person. So, there's been like in the case of this 345, when I bought it, it was a bit of a mess, and I took it to him, and he just sort of put it back together again. And he said, look, do you want the stereo? It's a bit knackered. We could, I could rewire it. We could sort of find new pots and all that. Or he said, or we could wire it like a 335. So we wired it like a 335. But what he's done is he's kept the switching pot, the little switching pot. He's kept that as a booster. So in one position, it works like a 335. And when I click it, just one position, it switches all the volume and the tone off and just both pickups on. Okay. It gives you another sort of, like a boost pedal. So if you're playing a solo and, it's not quite kicking, you can just switch this and bang, you get another little bit of percentage, which is a really cool thing. In fact, there's a few manufacturers are doing similar things.
Yeah, a lot of guys have not a lot, but a handful of guys have modified guitars like that. Yeah.
But Bill's he's the man. We all go to him. He's incredible.
There's a guy in the States called Joe Glazer who's the same thing. He's in Nashville.
I've heard
the same exact thing, yeah. Really brilliant guy. And I've met him. He's a very genuine, nice guy as well.
Yeah.
Desert Island Discs, man. No particular order, just whichever ones.
Oh, God.
I know.
Well, it would have to be Red House by Hendrix, because we haven't mentioned Hendrix, and Hendrix was a massive influence on me, because when I saw him play Hey Joe on Top of the Pops, I was about 13, and I just went, wow, and he made that connection between the old blues musicians and the modern underground music that was happening, the rock music that was happening. He made that connection. Yeah. And massive fan. Unfortunately, I never saw him play, which is a real shame, but I'm just a little bit too young. A couple of friends, Paul actually in Sniff and the Tears did see him play, because Paul's 2 or 3 years old, and those 2 or 3 years made all the difference. Yeah. And he was in London before I was, and so that Red House, Nimrod by Edgar Elgar, which is a very short piece of classical music. It's just absolutely beautiful. And I was trying to think what the other one would be. probably something by maybe Django Reinhardt or Pat Martino. Maybe Joyous Late by Pat Martino. I mean, there are, it's really hard because I was thinking about this, and there's a lot of other classical music, a lot of other jazz, there's a lot of blues, but Red House definitely, and Nimrod by Elgar. And then I would hide a bunch of others.
Can I tell you something really interesting? In America, when I say top desert island disc, it's CDs. Everybody in England, I say desert, they always give me singles.
All right.
Isn't that fun? So it's so funny. There's little different, like we speak the same language, but there's little different things that mean totally different things. In context. Yeah. It's because somebody did the other day, and I was like, oh, I guess he doesn't know. And then someone else did it again in England. And then I said, okay, so it's just a different context. Yeah. That's funny, man. Tough questions. Best decision you've ever made?
Okay, this is a sort of weird one in a way. There was a band called Pilot who had a hit with a thing called Magic.
Magic, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's right. Well, I was. What happened was that the great guitar player that ended up playing in the band, Ian Bernson, they were an Edinburgh band, and they had done some tracks with Ian, who's a phenomenal player. Played with Kate Bush at some points and played with the Alan Parsons Project and lots of other stuff. Really, really great player. We were contemporaries, around about the same age. He went to one school in Edinburgh, I went to the other. We knew each other when we were in shorts, all this sort of stuff. Anyway, he had, for whatever reason, I think he'd got a gig at a club, a paying gig, and decided that he wasn't going to be involved in the band. And they asked me to join the band, or to actually come down to London and to do some showcases, and we were flown to London. And this was not long before I ended up coming to London with Pete Atkins, so it was about 6 months before. And
so they were at Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
And they got a record deal, and they asked me to join the band, and I decided not to join the band. And now this is. I have to get this straight. I have to explain this properly because I don't want you in any way to diss the guys in Pilot because they're all amazing. But
I'm going to diss them no matter what. No, I'm just kidding.
but basically, the best decision I ever made was not to join the band because I think I was too young. And I think, in all honesty, we probably wouldn't have been having this conversation. I think I would have enjoyed myself too much.
You would have had control, yeah,
and probably destroyed myself. They were all a little bit older, and were much more experienced. So, and I, although I still to this day huge respect for them, great musicians, great writers, especially David Payton, the main singer and songwriter. But it was the best decision I made, I think, from my future and also from the point of view of it sort of pushed me into this, or kept me the direction I wanted to go in music. It kept me going there. I mean, it would have been fantastic. I would have been, a pop star and making, good money at a very early age, and but I think it would have killed me.
They were big. Were they big partiers or?
No, but I think knowing what I was capable of later on in life, I think it would have been too enticing, and I would have been immature.
How the hell did you have at that young an age the foresight and ability, the foresight to know this and ability then to act on it? That is really a gift.
Well, I don't think in all honesty, I don't think I had the foresight or the ability to act on it. I just think that I was scared, and I knew that this was an amazing opportunity. I felt it wasn't right. And I think that was maybe because they weren't playing the music that I really wanted to play, although it was fantastic and they were amazing musicians and still are. And I think that was the thing. But I think I was scared. Yeah, I think I was like, "Whoa, hang on, this is real," because they got a record deal. We were flown to London, and we got a record deal, with EMI Records, and so suddenly it was like, you want to join the band? We've got a record deal, you know. And I said, you have to give me a week to think about it, you know. And I think they were pretty disappointed that I hadn't joined. But then, of course, they then had something to offer Ian, and then Ian came back, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was incredible. So there was, you know, maybe it was meant to be. Maybe it was meant to be, Craig. Maybe it was.
Of course. No, that's good. I think it's just. I think I give you credit for making that decision.
Oh, thank you.
Most important things, Les, that you've learned about yourself throughout your musical journey and life in general.
To try and remember that I'm not the most important person in the room, and no matter what, if somebody is playing or singing a song or, you know, performing, and they are genuine about it and they really mean it, to respect that, even if it's not something I particularly like, you know, but to give them the space to be able to do that, and to any music that is performed genuinely from the heart. I think the bottom line is it's good music. So whether I am a fan of that music or not, you know, to respect it, and just also to respect, you know, the crew that works with you on a big tour, you know, because without the crew, the gig wouldn't go on. They're really important people. I've always had an affinity with hanging with the crew. I always like getting to know the crew because I feel it's part of the bigger family on tour or in a studio. You know, when I always tell people, if you go into a recording situation, the first person you need to make friends with is the engineer, the studio engineer, because they can make you sound great. They can also make you sound shit, you know, and you know, just respect and learning. You know, I was really green when I started. I didn't know what to do. And I made some mistakes along the way, like we've talked about earlier, you know, some behavior that, you know, if I, you know, being, you know, trying to, saying the wrong things sometimes in situations which, I don't do now, hopefully. Once again, my peers and my friends would probably disagree. They go, oh, yes, you do. You do it all the time. But I'm aware of that, you know, and being aware of that. But just being aware, I think that's it, being aware of the situation, of the dynamic of the situation. And when I was a younger man, some of the time I was not aware of the dynamic of the situation. And I could be, you know, caught up in the syndrome of the moment, you know, what I call the, you know, the star syndrome, you know, so you could be hired by somebody and you're like, wow, I've been a fan of this person since I was 13. I'm now making music with them, you know, so you can, instead of seeing them as the way that they should be viewed, which is another creative musician, you're a fan, and that's difficult sometimes, you know, because you just got to be normal, and it's hard sometimes when you know, I'm sure if we met, you know, Buddha, you know, we'd be in awe, you know. Yeah. So don't be in awe of people. Just be normal and be yourself. Be yourself is the most important thing. Don't try and be something you're not, you know.
It's funny when you mentioned you always had an affinity for the crew. Do you think that's because of, like, you know, your background where you grew up, you know, doing all the hard labor and all the yeah. Because, you know, I'm the same way, man. Because I grew up in the Bronx, you know, and I used to, my first job, I was a CPA. It's like a chartered accountant over there, and I would audit these big companies, man. And I felt like a fish out of water. And I remember someone said to me, you know, the good thing about you is you can go in there and talk to the CEO, and then you can go talk to the janitor that cleans his office at night. But I think you like talking to the janitor more. And it wasn't I liked him more. I was more comfortable with that because it was a more, it was, I didn't understand that. I understood what it's like to be a janitor or to you know, I didn't know what it's like to be a CEO of anything, you know? Yeah. So I totally get that, man.
Yeah, I think that you may well be right. You know, just coming from that farming background where people, you know, if you said, you know, what are you doing tonight? And I said to them, I'm going to do a gig in guitar, you know, most of them would be like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Big pansy, they would call me and stuff. They call me big girl's blouse.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And you get called all sorts of, you fucking weirdo, I would just laugh about it.
Sure.
And but the hard labor, I think, when you, respects, these guys and girls, they work hard, the riggers, the lighting, putting up stages, taking stages down, packing, making it all nice and comfortable for these, jumped up little bastard musicians who come on the stage and go, "Hey everybody, I'm amazing," clean my shoes,
Oh,
So I don't forget, it's what's about the ladder again, just trying to right size everything, just trying to keep it in perspective, and that, the more in perspective you can keep it, the better. Because it is show business and it is fantastic, and but we're all human beings. We're just human. We're just human beings at the end of the day. So.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm always the guy looking to see how someone I'm with is treating the wait staff. To be honest with you, because I always make mental notes of that, because that gives me an indication of who I'm dealing with. Not like, does he have a Rolex on, or does he have a this on or that on? That's more important to me. That gives you more, for me anyway, it gives me more insight to the character and stuff. Man, this is a tough question. What do you like most about yourself, Les?
Oh God, I don't know if I can answer that. I mean, I suppose this wouldn't have been the answer the whole of my life, but I'm very comfortable with myself now. That has not always been the case. God, you'd have to ask other people, really.
No, what you like most about yourself?
Because I think it's very difficult for me to have a perspective on myself, to be honest with you.
No, but what you enjoy most about yourself? Let's call Paul Stacey right now.
Yeah, Paul.
What does Les like most about himself?
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's just that. I mean, I suppose if I could look at it from the point of view of, I have followed my heart.
There you go.
I've followed what I wanted to do. But sometimes when it's been tough, I haven't wavered from that, because I still, the thing, when I wake up in the morning and I've got a day ahead of me. One of the things I'm really excited about doing is playing music still to this day, and so I suppose I'm happy that I had the drive, or took the opportunity, or took the risk, to follow that course. So that's the one thing I like about myself. So I tend to be a person that when they decide to do something, and maybe they've done some research about what they should do, but then I'll go for it, and I will try and do my best, and I will try and be as good as I can to other human beings along the way, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think so too. Man.
So I think
less stressful.
Yeah, less stressful, and I suppose on a good day, what I like about myself is the way I try and behave with other human beings. I try and behave to other human beings with grace. That's what I attempt to do. And I like that about myself, that I'm attempting to do. I don't always do it very well, but I like that about myself, that I attempt to do it, and that I'm aware and I'm conscious that should be something that's important.
Thanks, man. I knew we'd get an answer out of you. That was good. Tell me something about yourself people would be surprised to hear or might find a little strange.
God, I don't really know. I don't know, I can't actually think that, I think I'm pretty fucking strange anyway. So. So I don't think too many people would think that there's anything.
There's anything not strange about it?
Yeah.
Fair enough, man. Most important thing your dad taught you?
I think to follow your heart and to respect other human beings. My dad was a really gentle man. He was a bit of a giant of a man, but he was a really gentle man. And he was, I mean, to give you an example, when he passed away, you know, we thought we'll hire the small chapel because, you know, not that many people are going to come to the funeral. And it was the standing room only, and there was like 150 people outside the crematorium, you know. So that's got to say something about my father as a human being, you know.
Holy shit, yeah.
So yeah, he was, he you know, he didn't really, just by his being, I suppose is the way to describe it, you know, just the way he behaved. I learned a lot from seeing him behave, because he was an employer, you know, and so he employed people. Maybe that's another thing about the crew thing we're talking about. You know, maybe that's where I got some of that from.
Yeah, that's an important.
I saw him treat people well, and he would always give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, and so yeah, and but most importantly, to treat people with grace, as I said, and you know, to follow your heart. And he definitely taught me those things, and my mother did as well. But he definitely did.
What would you say your biggest business or personal win is, or has been?
Business-wise, well, I suppose we're all, you know, all individual musicians or business people.
Oh yeah, 100%.
To have survived in this business is a personal goal, you know, because. And I'm still surviving, you know. I may not be flavor of the moment, you know, but that's great. Because
right now, with me, you actually are flavor of the moment, Les.
This moment I have. But,
unfortunately, the compensation is not very good to be Craig Garber's flavor of the moment.
Don't worry, it's great to be doing this. It's an honor to be doing it, really. So so to have been. Not to have had to have done anything else is my, you know, and I've tried a few things. I had a little record company for a while, but it didn't work out. I had a recording studio with one of my sons for a while, and it worked, but then owning a recording studio it became very difficult. So we decided to close it before it took our shirts, you know. But that went on for 10 years plus.
That's a good run.
Yeah, it's a good run. Yeah, and we did we had some fun, and some great music was played, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that business wise, and I go back to personally, you know, just the thing about still being here, people still, you know, wanting to hire me. I'm very grateful for that, and just having that, you know. Having that drive to want to keep doing it, you know. I think it was Artie Shaw said when he realized he couldn't practice to the level that he wanted to practice anymore to keep up his performance ability, he decided to stop playing, you know. And I can understand that, you know. He just said, well, I'm going to retire now, and I'm not going to play again ever, you know, because he couldn't find the time to practice to keep his level that he required.
What did he play? What instrument did he play?
He was a clarinet player.
Okay.
You know, so you know, maybe maybe that thing of just being so still driven to do it, you know, still really enjoying doing it is a personal achievement. And being a father and being a grandfather, you know.
How many kids you have?
I've got two boys and two grandchildren, one boy and one girl.
Good, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's they're a joy to be with, because they don't give a fuck that I'm a guitar player. It's amazing. Grandchildren, they're like, Grandpa, we want more of this, you know.
Yeah.
Fuck your guitars.
I have a granddaughter. You know, that I like is I don't I always found having kids, the weight of that responsibility was really heavy on me. And it's nice. I don't feel like that with my granddaughter. It's like,
no. Well, also the thing with grandchildren is you can give them back.
yeah. Like, whatever. It's just tired, whatever. I don't, yeah.
But they're great as well because they, children say the most incredible things. Like it wasn't my grandchildren, but I was doing a little sort of reception at a wedding for a friend once, just playing a little bit, and playing guitar, and a little girl came up to me and looked at the guitar and said, "Where does the music go when you stop playing?" And I was just like,
great,
wow.
Man. That's great. That is precious. That's perfect, man.
Only a small child would think of that.
Where does the music go when you stop playing? That's great. Hey, man, this is the last question, and right. I cannot thank you. I've had such a good time. You're such a class guy, man.
As I say, I'm really honored and grateful that you've asked me. Thank you very much.
I'm honored, man. I'm honored.
Sense.
the honor is mine and the pleasure is mine, so thank you for spending your time with me. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this has been intentional and how much is a part of aging?
Well, certainly aging, the Grim Reaper, rears its ugly head. As Donald Fagen said, the man in the white nightgown, that song about if you see a man in the white nightgown at the end of your bed, watch out, because it's a Grim Reaper. I think having having a spiritual path in my life, which I definitely have, and that becoming a much more important part of my life. So although, I identify myself as a guitar player, I also identify myself as someone who follows a spiritual path. I really try and follow a spiritual path of all these things I've been saying, about trying to, treat other people well. And it's not religious. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a religious person, but I'm definitely a spiritual person. And so it's like full circle in the sense of being brought on the farm and seeing life and death on a daily basis,
Yeah.
As I've gone through the glitz and glam of rock and roll, to get to the reality of that. I've seen all that, done all that sort of stuff, like a lot of other people have. And I see it for what it is, for the fun it is, and the bullshit it is as well. So I'm sort of clearer on that, and that's made my life a lot simpler. So that's a big change, yeah. It being simpler and not being swayed by that stuff. And being more real, just having a much more real attitude towards things. So which I hope that some of that stuff I've been talking about makes sense with what I'm saying there.
Everything makes sense, man. I'd say you've been very upfront, very, I don't know what your past was like, but you're a super humble guy to me. I mean, you seem like you really put a lot of effort into being a genuine person. Fuck, that's all you can do, man. Right? I mean, some days it works, some days it doesn't.
Yeah.
Some days it works better than others, but if your heart's in the right place, to me anyway,
Humility is a really important thing. In the past, the arrogance of youth, and the innocence of youth, and the not having learned the ropes, it's different now. So
man. Cool. Whatever you did, you're forgiven. Trust me. Because I tell myself that, so I could tell somebody else that. Right, okay. Man, listen. Thank you again for everything. Let me tell people where to find you, and we got to make sure when I come to London, we go have a beer.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, so you can actually come check out Les play Sniff in the Tears, which is Paul Roberts and Les right now. They're doing a really cool acoustic run that has gone over like gangbusters. So they played a couple of gigs in London. They're going to be touring London and then throughout the rest of the UK. And the plan is to tour Europe and hopefully to come and do a little US tour. And So please support Les and Sniff in the Tears. And I'm going to give you the website. It's Sniff in the Tears. That's the name of the band. Sniff, S-N-I-F-F, of course, N, the letter N, sniffnthetears.com. So it's Sniff, the letter N, thetears.com. And there's also some very cool videos on the site too, from the whole history of the band. It's really cool stuff to watch. Anything else? And then enroll in BIM, ask for less.
Yeah, come to BIM and learn guitar, bass, or drums, or vocals.
That's right.
The tutors, I have to say, all the other tutors at BIM are fantastic. They're all pros. That's what they do, and they just happen to teach a little bit, a couple of days a week. So they're all great. So it's a cool environment. Very good, very good.
I miss anything? Anything I forgot? Anything?
No. It's been a really wonderful Friday.
Oh man, I appreciate your time. That's right. It's like 9:30 there. Fuck. So thank you. Oh my God.
That's great. That's great. I hope you edit out all the rubbish.
Not much.
All the gibbering.
It's all good, man.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with a friend on your social media channels. I certainly appreciate your support. Thanks very much to Les Davidson for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Please check out Sniff in the Tears. He's just he's a legend, literally. Like I spoke to 4 or 5 guys and mentioned, I'm talking to Les Davidson, like, holy shit, that guy's a badass. They didn't say it like that because that's not how English people speak, but that's my Americanized version of it. You guys are so eloquent all the time. And then there's me from the Bronx. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com, sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.